you know, Ubud is not only a co-working space. We organize events daily, and most people say that events are the DNA of Ubud. And today we're welcoming Zhané. She's going to talk about biohacking, about health and how to improve your health, improve your sleep. And before she starts, a couple of words about the other event this week. Tomorrow we're having the social hour, members lunch. It's going to be here in the canteen area, but it's not food from the canteen. It's our invited food supplier. And on Saturday we're organizing social hour again. It's going to be the Canada Day with Robe. So Robe is a co-living space here in Bali, here in Ubud. So check out that, and you can find all the information about our events in one pager, basically on our website and in our Facebook group. So once again, welcome, Zhané.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Biohacking for Digital Nomads. As you just heard, my name is Zhané, and I'm an epigenetic human potential coach at the Apeiron Academy in the US. So I've lived in Bali for about 12 months now. I came here on a holiday with my father close to the end of last year and decided that I wouldn't leave. So here we are. Just with a show of hands, how many of you had heard of biohacking before you saw the event? Yep. And keep your hand raised if you think you'd be able to explain it to someone if they had asked you. Yeah, so that's probably a very fair depiction of the general population. Very few people have any idea what biohacking is. It sounds a bit techie, a bit of a cool term, but the actual application of it and the logistics of it get very muddled. And even myself, when someone asks me, like, I'll explain myself or describe myself as a biohacker, and they get really interested because it's this hot, sexy word, and they'll ask me to explain it, and even I come to a loss. I'm like, oh, I drink bulletproof coffee, I sometimes fast, I'm really productive. And they're like, oh, that's really cool. So like, what supplements do you take? And everyone wants the quick fix. But today I've really kind of focused this talk around a biohacking 101. So we really centered this talk around what are the small incremental steps that we can make to improve our health and our performance that are going to be easy to implement and not going to cost thousands of dollars, because people have spent thousands of dollars doing it to themselves, and we can learn from their mistakes or their lessons. So, as I said, when I struggled to describe biohacking to other people, I took to Dr. Google to find out what they say. And Google says that biohacking is the activity of exploiting genetic material experimentally without regard to accepted ethical standards. This part I don't really agree with, or for criminal purposes. That didn't sit well with me at all, for like obvious reasons. I didn't like the way that made me feel like I was like really doing something like morally wrong. I was going against the law, like by choosing to eat healthy food. That didn't really make sense to me. I much prefer this description. A crazy sounding name for something not so crazy at all. The desire to be the absolute best version of ourselves. The main thing that separates a biohacker from the rest of the self-improvement world is a systems thinking approach to our own biology. Now, who knows who this is? Has anyone recognized that face? Yeah, so this is Dave Asprey, and as it says, the founder of Bulletproof Coffee, Bulletproof Company, and the Silicon Valley Health Institute. So Dave Asprey was a wildly successful entrepreneur in his younger years and earned hundreds of thousands up to millions of dollars, and spent the vast majority of that doing tests to hack his own biology. He was overweight, unproductive, feeling sluggish, and was doing everything that conventional medicine told him to do to overcome those things. And it didn't work. So he did some weird experiments, which I won't go too much into, but he did some things like he injected caffeine into his veins to see like the effect that it had. He experimented with the different types of mold toxins on coffee beans and how that would affect the type of caffeine that he would intake. He sequenced his entire DNA. As we were discussing prior to this talk, he currently takes upwards of 100 supplements per day, because he's so extreme. He wants optimal performance. Like if he's feeling a slightly bit like foggy, he'll pop a pill that's called a nootropic that contains specific compounds that will make his brain more alert, supposedly, and he'll be able to hit that kind of more hyperproductive state quicker.
He's been exposed by a lot of scientists as a scam. You know, like a lot of this stuff is basically bullshit, and he's profiting off it.
Oh, well, yes. I mean, like, he does have his own company called the Bulletproof Company, and they do market supplements, and so there would be lots of skepticism, I would believe, around that. I'm like a scientific person myself, and lots of the things that he prescribes to the general population, there's like no fault with. I'm like, he's not out there saying everyone needs to be on 100 pills a day. Like, I see him and I'm kind of like...
Even as MCT coffee has been exposed as a scam, so...
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some people that might think that, but I mean, like, but then again, it's all individual. Like, if someone feels like it might even be, you know, the placebo effect. If they think that the MCT oil is giving them that accelerated performance, but they still feel that accelerated performance, who's to say that it doesn't? Yes, do you have a question? No? Okay, so the best way to explain biohacking in terms of input and output is with something we all know and love. It's coffee. Yay. Exactly, yay. So
yeah, that's what you have now.
Exactly. There we go, the perfect example. So pre-coffee you, perhaps, is sleepy, is tired, is a little bit unproductive. Post-coffee you is wide awake and ready to take on the world. The only variable in that equation is that the coffee has gone from the cup into your stomach. So the lesson from that is this: what we put into our body has an enormous impact on how we feel. And we all know this. What we eat and what we drink is a way that we can alter our state. Another example is music. If we listen to smooth jazz, we're going to be feeling very different than if we were blasting techno. But we'll get into more of that later on. The things we put into our stomach and our ears are inputs into our biology. And as humans, we are complex systems. What goes into us will affect what comes out of us. Our behaviours, our health, and our performance in all areas of our life are outputs. So if we want to improve our outputs, if we want to have more energy, more focus, be free of disease, to have a better memory recall, and to perform optimally in business and athletics, let's tweak the things that we put into our body and our mind to stack the odds into our favour. Now, when I gave this talk at Dojo in Canggu, many people were expecting, as I said, some strangely acute tech gadgets, supplementation recommendations, blood tests that I would be recommending. As I said at the beginning of the talk, Biohacking 101. Let's lay a really solid foundation so that we can understand exactly what our bodies are doing, how they thrive. And perhaps if further down the road you would like to do some more techie tests and indulge yourself in sequencing your DNA and seeing that the areas that you might require some acute supplementation, some nutrition help, some athletic performance if you're an athlete, or even disease prevention, come and speak to me later on. So, we're a few minutes in now, and you're probably wondering, who am I and why should you listen to me? So, as I said, my name is Zhané. I've lived in Bali now for almost 12 months, and when I came here at the end of last year with my father, that was the first time that I had been medically allowed to leave Australia in 5 years. So at the age of 16, I was diagnosed with a near fatal anorexia nervosa that kept me in and out of hospital for those 5 years. I spent the vast majority of that time in hospital, and I reached a certain point where quality of life and being sick, there was no comparison. I decided I wanted a life, and so I actually, instead of just being in hospital and taking what the doctors were telling me was gospel that I'd been hearing for 5 years and wasn't really having any effect, I took to podcasts. And I'd lie in my bed in the hospital listening to podcasts about health and nutrition. And then because I'm a very type A person, I became obsessed, and I had to learn the how and the why and know everything behind it. And so when the doctor sat down with me and they'd say, "Oh, your liver's inflamed, you're having this reaction," I'd be like, "Yeah, it's because I'm allergic to gluten." They're like, "Oh, no, you're not, that's all in your head, that's psychosomatic." 3 months later, when I was out of hospital and had the tests, yeah, it turns out I was allergic to gluten and I was allergic to dairy that was inflaming my organs, and they couldn't explain where I was getting sick. So when I decided that I would leave the medical model, I seeked holistic medicine, so holistic health, a naturopath, a nutritionist, and a holistic practitioner. My family freaked out. The medical model was all that they knew, understandably. And I started working with this naturopath, and within 6 months I gained 15 kilos and was able to keep it on. And that was the first time I'd ever been able to do that outside of hospital. Now, the hack for doing that, the way that I was able to hack my psychology in that situation was I changed my entire life. That sounds very cliche, and it sounds like that may be very inapplicable to some people, but your patterns, your everyday patterns and behaviors are what breed your current situation. So my current situation was I would wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and that would be my 2 hours of compulsive exercise. And then it would be my lack of nutrition at breakfast. And then it would be some more exercise in between and maybe lack of nutrition at lunch. And a continuous cycle every day that was bred in the same house, the same school, the same transport. So in accordance with what I was being told, I packed up my stuff and I moved an hour and a half down the road to a beachside town in Melbourne called Torquay. So I moved in with my father in this coastal town and I reprogrammed my entire day. My entire day now included sleeping till 6 a.m. My only exercises were long walks along the beach, yoga, and playing with my dogs. And I programmed myself that 3 times a day at every main meal and those 2 snacks in between, I would sit down at the table with my father, and the amount of food and portions that were on his plate were equal to mine, and that was my new normal. So at the age of 18, eating what a 60-year-old weight training man was eating became my normal. But it was easy because you weren't weird. You were with someone doing the exact same thing. You were surrounding yourself with the right people and giving yourself the environment that enabled you to thrive. So, what else can we hack? If you're able to hack yourself out of, I wouldn't say out of, but if you're able to hack yourself away from something so debilitating, what else can we hack in our lives to become more productive, more energetic, and more productive? So, this is the few things we're going to cover today that I think lay a really important groundwork for Biohacking 101. So let's begin with posture. Now we all know, or you may have heard, that sitting is the new smoking. So just bear with me for a moment, and can everyone just stand up? So, squeeze your butt, breathe out and pull your rib cage down. Engage your abs only 20%, and then set your head in a neutral position. Imagine you are being pulled up by a thread at the top of your head. That simple exercise that you have just done has just stabilized your spine and neutralized your spine. You can all sit down now, but know that that stable position and neutral position of your spine is the best way to keep your spine healthy throughout the course of a day. Now, when they say that sitting is the new smoking, that is because in a seated position, it is near impossible to maintain that integrity of the spine, unless you're sitting cross-legged, or like you may see many of the local Balinese do, they sit in an inset squat position as they eat at a table, when they go to the bathroom. That natural movement that has come so easy to them, that as Westerners we have now lost. That is a way that maintains the integrity of the spine and allows the neurons from your spine to fire up to your brain and allows those signals to pass quicker. That is why the new emergence of stand-up desks, of moving workstations. I've got a friend that just spent like $2,000 on like a walking like treadmill desk. I'm not sure if I can wrap my head around that. I think that might be too much like multitasking for me. But if it works for them, there you go. So that's a simple exercise that you can do at your desk throughout the course of a day. Perhaps you might want to set a reminder on your phone that goes off. I have that every hour that just sets off, and just a quick little, yep, okay. But you may have heard of someone called Kelly Starrett, and he's a person that endorses the benefits of not exercise, but movement in your day. So he's founded this company called Mobility WOD. And if you log onto YouTube and type in Mobility WOD Kelly Starrett, there are things, little exercises that you can do throughout the course of a day at a desk, and little hacks, or like a 5-minute workout that's not really a workout at all, but it mobilizes your body and gets those neurons firing up and down your spine. So you'll get those messages faster and your brain will function more acutely throughout the day. But the 2 tips that he would recommend for movement throughout the day. So the number 1 is spend 10 minutes each day foam rolling. So who's ever used one of these before? Yeah. I remember when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of like rolling around on the floor, and everyone's like, it's, you know, it should be really like digging in. And then the first time that it really dug in, I was like, this is horrible. Why would anyone do this? So I Googled and I YouTubed, and now I learned how to use it efficiently and effectively post-workout, pre-workout, or on a rest day if I just do need to mobilize my body. So
what is it actually for?
a foam roller. I won't get down on the floor and show it to you. I might. But so if you were to, let's just say, do it on your calf, you would do something like this, and it releases the tension in that calf. So if you point your toe, flex your toe, you'll be engaging different muscles in your calf and releasing tension in different places. Now that goes the same for on your back, on your bum, which is the most painful for me. Yes?
Just have a question. I've been doing this for a while.
Yep.
It's really painful. So
yeah.
I don't know how long you've been doing it. So after like 5-6 months, is it still the same?
Well, is it like a muscular thing or a bone thing?
Bone.
Ah, yeah, I wouldn't say that might be something you need to see like an osteo about, because if it's the bone, then I would avoid putting that on bone, because it's really like just pressure on pressure. That would be more for like a deep tissue, like a myofascial release. Yeah, so that might actually be a mobility problem in the hip. Yeah, I'll speak to you after about an osteo.
Do you use it on your arms?
Yes, you can.
I've got problems with my arms.
Yeah, there's one that's really bad. I'm just like, I hate to describe that to you, but it's like, it's if you were having it there and you kind of like roll up and down, okay, and it goes along the backs of your arms. I'll show it to you at the end, but that can, yeah, release some tension. So your takeaway for posture, a quick postural reset of the neutral spine. Okay, and this is on to the next topic, which is, oh, there we go. Probably should have put that on before. There you go. Remind yourself to reset your, oh, punch a friend, I forgot. So Kelly Starrett of Mobility WOD, he also encourages, as lots of people do, to hold yourself accountable. So engage things in groups or teams. So with this postural reset, when he actually conducts the test as he did at the Biohacking Summit, if there's someone that's not engaging their core, he'll encourage you to go up and punch them in the stomach. I can guarantee you that after that's happened to you once, you will never forget, because it really hurts. And then you'll maintain that tight position every time. So onto nutrition, which is my labor of love personally, and I could spend the rest of the hour talking about this, but I won't. So nutrition for me, lots of people love to get very techie about nutrition and very acute. I'm the same. I can get very obsessed with it. However, it really doesn't need to be that hard. And people love to overcomplicate things a lot. And the simple takeaways when it comes to nutrition that I would recommend to everybody: eat more fat, because I can guarantee that 80 to 90% of people would not be meeting what I would recommend as their daily requirement of intakes of fat. Eat lots of vegetables, no matter which health tribe you belong to, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, paleo, whatever. The only thing that 90% of people agree on is an abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables. Getting fresh fruits and vegetables into your diet, you will be exposed to a broader range of micronutrients that you could ever experience through any other macronutrient. Quality protein. That doesn't mean a lot of protein, that means quality sources of protein. So high-fat sourced fish, wild-caught fish, salmon, trout, sardines, grass-fed, if you can, red meat, and organic poultry, and eggs. Now, many people will have an intolerance to eggs that they don't know about. I love to tell myself that I'm fine. Not. But I just really like eggs. If I ate eggs every day, I become intolerant within a matter of about a week and start experiencing like some rashes and inflammation. So lots of people, their version of a intolerance to eggs might be some bloating, might be some gas, might be discomfort in the stomach, might be some gut dysbiosis. But I can guarantee that there's actually scientific research that's come out suggesting that upwards of 60% of people have an intolerance to eggs and or nuts.
Just wondering, in Bali,
Yep.
where's the best high quality protein?
Yeah, so I do have some suppliers that I'll speak to you about at the end. If anyone else is interested, hang around. I've found a place in Canggu. They don't do organic because I don't think they could necessarily get a certification, but it is the closest and highest source that I could find. Bali Buddha for me, I've actually just gone to Bali Buddha in Canggu and I've just asked them where they source their meat and their poultry, and then I've gone online, done a bit of a Google and looked into it. So if you go to Bali Buddha in Ubud and ask the question, I would be surprised if they didn't give you the answer, unless of course they just have no idea. You need to speak to the manager. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, do you have a question?
Oh yeah, if you want to finish.
Yeah, so and then in terms of like fruits and vegetables, I prefer to order those from like a Bali Organics or an Island Organics, simply because you know that they are organic. However, the problem with that is you'll order what you think is your week's worth of fruits and vegetables, and then you get it delivered and half the things aren't in season and they haven't told you, so you've only got half your bounty. So in that case, I've found a little like market close to where I live that supplies to all the local like restaurants and cafes that I know is still of a high quality. But I will always like wash my fruits and vegetables before I eat them, and with the protein, yeah, I will always do a Google and speak to the owner before I purchase anything.
I find a lot of the restaurants here, the fat they use is really bad when they're cooking. It's
Yeah.
like rancid most of the time.
That's probably one of the most difficult things eating here. If you can, like, I've never had an issue going out to eat and asking them to either cook in butter or coconut oil if they have it. I personally prefer to cook, if it's being grilled, I would always cook it in butter and not coconut oil. Coconut oil I preserve for oven, so like low heats in a baking. If they can cook it in a butter, which most restaurants really should have, I've never had a problem asking for that. So that's maybe if you haven't tried that, I do. But I mean, the local like warongs and things, like I'm really allergic to MSG. And there have been some warongs I've gone to that are supposedly like very clean and very healthy, but it's still an exposure. Yeah, exactly. And then also from then on, I would also recommend for lots of digital nomads, if you've got like Skype calls in the middle of the night, early mornings, if you're working odd hours, one thing you may have heard of, raise your hand if you've heard of bulletproof coffee, or just like a fatty coffee. Yeah. So raise your hand if you've had it before. Keep your hand raised if you liked it.
Liked it.
Yeah, if you like the taste. Yeah, see, I get that reaction very often. And when I had my first cup, I felt amazing, but I just couldn't bear the taste. Like, it was something about it, and I've tweaked it, and I've looked at that many recipes online. The only way I can make it palatable for myself is to add cacao. Add cacao and make it taste like chocolate. If anyone hasn't tried that, add some cacao and it tastes about 10 times better. But so if, and it's the only, like I took my like I'd been talking about it for months, and my dad came and we were out at a cafe. I was like, oh, this is the place where I get my bulletproof coffee. He's like, oh, I'll order one. Had about 2 sips and he's like, I might order a cappuccino now. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So yeah, if you haven't tried it with some cacao makes it really nice, really smooth and palatable. So if you do have Skype calls early morning, late night, and you're feeling a bit groggy, instead of opting for a carb-heavy breakfast, which yes, you may think that a bircher muesli or porridge is a healthy option, comparatively to many other options, perhaps it is compared to Cheerios or something like that. However, starting your day with a carb-heavy breakfast will spike your blood sugar and will give you a spike of energy for a mere moment. And within a few hours, your blood sugar will crash and you'll be hungry, tired, and unfocused. So why I love the bulletproof coffee is because it gives you 3 things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bulletproof coffee. That's just a brand. That's just what I like calling it because I think it sounds sexy. I just like the name, like bulletproof. I don't know. To me, I like the name. But 3 things. Suppresses hunger. It gives you a sustained energy because you've got such a high concentration of fat there that it's a slow release. It's not going to spike your blood sugar like a carbohydrate would, and then it will, and I think this is a very big issue too when it comes to bulletproof coffee. People freak out because of the amount of calories in it. There's so many calories in bulletproof coffee, so many calories coming from fat. Any client that I've worked with, if ever they start talking about calories, I'm like, you just need to stop right now. I'm like, forget the calories go out the window, let's focus on nutrition and nutrient density. In terms of nutrient density, organic grass-fed butter is one of the most amazing things that you could be having. If you are a vegan or vegetarian, I apologize, but that is where what I believe. I was following a vegan diet for 6 months, and my healer up here in Ubud, who is also a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, was encouraging me, you need to reintroduce some animal protein. That freaked me out. No way was I going to do that. She was like, just start with some ghee. A tablespoon of ghee a day, I felt like a new person. And then from there, I woke up one morning craving scrambled eggs. So I had scrambled eggs. And from there, it just kind of moved on and progressed until I came across what is ultimately closer to like a paleo diet that still includes some grains, some dairy, if I can tolerate it, of a high quality. And that is really what I prescribe to all my clients in terms of nutrition. Lots of vegetables, more fat, quality protein, and just enough carb in terms of starchy carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates like bananas, rice, sweet potato, to indulge and have some fun, because sometimes you want to go out and you want to have some sushi. Like, I love sushi, and it pains me. Like, I went through a couple, has anyone heard of the ketogenic diet? Yeah. So I was in ketosis for like a strict ketosis for maybe like 2 weeks. And for me, it just didn't work. I got way too lean, and my cognition slowed and my performance dropped. So now I do like a cyclical approach, and that works perfect for me because I can choose when I want my sushi and just work it in. If anyone would like to chat about the ketogenic diet or has heard a little bit about it, I can speak to you at the end about that as well. So just imagine how much you could achieve in a week if you had a few extra hours each day, where you weren't hungry, you weren't foggy, thinking about food, cooking it, and then eating it. That intense feeling of hunger, or I need to eat now, or I'm gonna die or kill someone, is not a sign that you're doing well or that you're dieting well. It's actually a sign that what you ate at your last meal wasn't satiating enough and hasn't signaled your hormones ghrelin and insulin in your body. Once those 2 hormones have been signaled and is satisfied, you should feel a sustained release of food for a prolonged period of time. I like to think of it in terms of the amount of calories that you might get in a meal. Let's say, for example, you get 100 calories, will possibly keep you full for an hour. So 100 calories per hour. So if I have a really high calorie breakfast or nutrient dense breakfast that might come to 800 or 900 calories, that might sound a lot, might not eat again till dinner. So that's a way that you might be able to balance it out. So as I mentioned, fat is the most important and least inflammatory macronutrient. So I would recommend 50 to 70% of your daily calories coming from fat, not volume, not 50 to 70% of your plate of calories, of fat, 50 to 70% of your calories. Because fat is so nutrient dense, you really don't need a whole lot of it to achieve that. That might be a whole avocado and a couple of tablespoons maybe of olive oil, grass-fed butter. It doesn't need, it might be some nuts and seeds, might be some almonds, might be some macadamias. It doesn't need to be eggs and bacon for every meal that I'm sure as many of you who are familiar with the ketogenic diet is kind of what's been idolized, is you eat eggs and bacon at every meal and you lose weight. Don't think that really happens. However, we're often told to avoid fat because it has more calories, but when we build a high performance car and we want it to go faster, we give it high octane fuel, which stores more energy than low octane fuel. So if you were to give yourself a cleaner burning fuel that's going to allow you a sustained release, is that not the human version of a high octane fuel? Interesting fact, fat is also the basis for the lining of your nerves, called myelin, which allows electricity to flow more efficiently throughout your body. If you were to be eating more fat and your body were to store more fat, not in the terms of excess fat, of healthy fat stores, you are literally able to think faster because those signals are able to travel through the myelin and through the fat more efficiently than if they were to be blocked or clogged. There we go. So, I feel like number 3 is a bit like self-explanatory. I feel like in this era, most people know to avoid processed foods and to reduce their sugar. But as I mentioned, your takeaways are eat more vegetables, healthy fats. So healthy fats, what would that look like? Who's got examples? Avocado,
Yeah.
nuts, coconut oil, grass-fed butter, coconut meat. So often I see people, they'll order a whole young fresh coconut and they'll drink the water and then they'll just throw the rest of the coconut away. I'm like, so much fat there. So much fat. Like I sit there with a spoon every time, like, can I please have a spoon? And I remember once somewhere else I went and I was surprised because it was a local Indonesian guy who served me and he gave me my coconut and then I asked for a spoon and he goes, you realize it's a drink? Like, yes, I know that, but once the liquid's gone, I want to eat it. So even that's a great way to do it. Just get in some extra fat. If you're a little bit hungry after you've had your coconut and it's a couple hours till lunch, eat the coconut meat. So what would your fat intake look like if you were a male and a woman? So for a male, that would be 120 to 150 grams per day. So that's 8 to 10 tablespoons. Now, like I said, that might be 8 to 10 tablespoons of olive oil, grass-fed butter, avocado, nuts, seeds, whatever. For women, that would be 90 to 120 grams, so 6 to 8 tablespoons per day. Now, while we often obsess about what we eat, we don't so often think about what we drink. But what we drink is just as important as what we eat. But we're not aware of how processed our water is. It's just as processed as the processed foods that we eat or tend to avoid. So, if you take to Google and you're looking up like some hydration and some information on water, particularly on Dave Asprey's website, he'll recommend you to a site called www.bindaspring.com. So what this website does is it helps you find the closest spring near you so that you can access fresh spring water yourself. I don't know how practical that is for anyone in the modern era. I don't know who would ever use that. So otherwise, just opt for bottled water. It is likely going to be filtered in places like Ubud or Dojo or co-working spaces. We are lucky enough to have access to filtered water. In some cases, I know at Bali, Buddha and Canggu, I'm not sure about Ubud, I would have to check. Their water is all passed through reverse osmosis. So they've got a reverse osmosis water filter in their kitchen, which means that the water has been purified, taking out any excess chemicals and toxins, and has been refiltered with Epsom salt. Although you can't taste the salt, which is an extra benefit. So how much water should you be drinking? Your weight in pounds times 30 milliliters. Now, when you do this calculation, I can guarantee you're going to think it's way too much. It's not, especially if you're living in Bali in a hot climate. When I first came, I underestimated how much water I should be drinking and ended up with dehydration. So something else I like to do is half to a teaspoon of sea salt or Himalayan pink salt in your water each day. So for me, I personally love to take it upon waking because then it's done. I don't have to think about it. Many other people will add it to a larger bottle like this one and just sip that throughout the day. If you can taste it, you're probably not going to want to drink your water. So be very careful with how you do it. I just do it that way in the morning because then it's done. And then the rest of my day, my water just tastes like water. Now this is also very key because if you're working remotely, perhaps you're a very relaxed person. I haven't, like even in Bali, some people are relaxed, but if you have a job, you tend to get stressed sometimes. So when you're stressed, your adrenals become too stressed to secrete something called aldosterone. So this is what makes you become dehydrated and lowers your blood pressure and will make you crave salty foods. So there you go. Your weight in pounds times 30 milliliters, some sea salt, and the rubber band rule. A friend of mine exposed this to me the other day, which I thought was a really great idea because I'm someone that loves having a to-do list. I love ticking things off. So what he does, he puts 8 rubber bands around his smaller drink bottle, so not one like this, a smaller one. And every time that he's drunk one entire drink bottle, he'll move up a rubber band, and then the next, and then the next. If you have a smaller drink bottle, it actually sounded like a great idea for girls. If you ever need hair ties, you've got hair ties there. It's like a perfect hack there. I personally just prefer having like one large one, and I know I need to get through 2 of those a day. So movement. We all know that movement's important. Moving around is great for your nervous system, your brain, and your detox pathways. So, as we've been speaking about Dave Asprey before, this is him. So he embarked on an experiment. If everything that we had learnt about diets was true, he would gain a pound of fat for every extra 3,500 calories that he ate, especially if it came from fat and saturated fat specifically. So in 2009, he stopped exercising completely. He cut his sleep to less than 5 hours a night, which is supposedly also supposed to make you fat. And he started eating between 4,000 to 4,500 calories per day, hitting that 70% of fat. He claimed, as some skeptics may say, but I've met him, I've spoken to him about it, and I personally believe him, that his brain worked effortlessly, that he didn't find that he needed more sleep, and that he grew a 6-pack. So at this point, he would have been around 45 years old. And this is with 0 exercise. And then, after a couple months, he decided that he liked this so much. He could literally stuff himself with food on 4,500 calories a day, but he felt lazy. So he started moving. So his form of movement that they found the most effective and the least that you could ever need is 30 minutes of walking per day. To stay, like, the baseline of healthy was 30 minutes of walking per day. However, when you introduced 1 to 2 sessions of high intensity work per week, the results were exponential. Now, you might hear some health and fitness experts, some might prescribe like a high intensity workout that might be 8 minutes. Some might say 20. I think any form of high intensity movement that you're doing 1 to 2 times a week is beneficial. I don't think you need to get caught up in the logistics of it. But so what Dave did, he would recommend his were 20-minute workouts that you would do at like a reasonably heavy weight. So it would always involve some sort of weight training. That at the end of the 20 minutes, you would be reaching muscular failure. So you could physically not do any more reps. So at my last talk, someone was like to me, so you just do it like to muscular failure, like as soon as possible. And I can understand why for someone that just wants to get things done, that might work. But if it's a 20-minute high intensity, you need to be working for that 20 minutes. You can't burn yourself out in the first 5 and then be laying on the ground 15 minutes. Or I've done my workout today. However, who's heard of Tim Ferriss? And has anyone read the 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour Body, blah, blah, blah? So in the 4-Hour Body, he recommends kettlebell swings. 3 minutes of max effort kettlebell swings 3 times a week had a drastic improvement on his father's body composition, who was, I think, about a 70-year-old man, and a 16-year-old girl who, within the space of 6 months, went from just your average 16-year-old girl to she was able to weightlift twice her weight. And was able to deadlift heavier than Tim Ferriss as like a 35-year-old man. So the takeaway here is that your movement doesn't have to be much. I personally really enjoy exercise. Lots of people don't. And so the great news is you don't have to do it all the time. 30 minutes of walking per day might mean that you're walking to the co-working space, and your high intensity workout might be running up and down the trail at Dragonfly Village. might be doing some push-ups. It might be grabbing yourself some dumbbells and doing some reps for 20 minutes until you reach muscular failure. My dad went, okay, I don't have a lot of time. What's the one thing I can do? I said, okay, we're going to the store and we're buying a kettlebell. So the only equipment he's got at home is a kettlebell. And it's all he needs, because all the other compound movements he can do with his body. Push-ups, squats, you don't need a whole gym. Sleep.
Do you do deadlifts and stuff like that?
Yes, so I train CrossFit in Canggu. That's my preferred type of training. I think for me it's more of a social thing, and I think that's really important for most people too. Like when I don't have that community of people, I'm less likely to go. I wake up in the morning and I know that I've got 2 hours or an hour like with my friends. However, I have done my I've sequenced my DNA, and when you sequence your DNA, you can test whether you are a power athlete, an endurance athlete, or like you've got high like cardiovascular output for high intensity exercise. And I'm predisposed to endurance, which I knew, but as a kid, just running for a long time was really boring, and you do it on your own, and I didn't like it. But since I sequenced my DNA, I've gotten back into that. So throughout the course of this year, I'll be doing 3 half marathons and a full marathon in December. Yeah.
Where can I sequence my DNA and how much does it cost?
Yeah, so you can do it. Have you heard of a company called 23andMe?
No.
So they're an American company. However, they actually won't give you all of the results, because some of them can be controversial in terms of what disease you might be open to, which to me seems counterproductive. If you're sequencing your DNA to expose disease prevention, I would want to know what diseases I'm going to get. Whereas 23andMe, the government has some sort of like hold where they're not allowed to expose particular ones. I would suggest because they've got some sort of arrangement with the medical system.
Not absolutely tested yet.
Well,
So
exactly.
that's the thing. Like then people goes crazy. Like, oh, I'm gonna have cancer. No,
Exactly.
There's like a slightly chance, but we don't actually know if you are going to get it.
Well, exactly. So what I study, I'm an epigenetic practitioner. So epi means on top of or in addition to. So I study everything other than your genetics that influences your health. So if I were to sequence your DNA through the people I work with, so I work with a company in America, so you will send a sample to them in America, so that might be a skin graft, it might be hair, and then I will get those results, and then I will translate to you exactly what those results mean, the supplements that you might need or you don't need. I've worked with people before that were on taking like 10 pills a day, and then like we sequence them. I'm like, you are way too high in all of those things. Stop paying $100 a month for your supplements because you simply don't need it. So yeah, you would send a sample to America. I would get the results, and then we would interpret that over Skype or in person if you're in Bali or whatever. Yeah. So, sleep. Who thinks they get enough sleep? Who never feels like they get enough sleep? Yeah. Okay. So you may be disheartened. Yeah, exactly. You may be disheartened to hear that there is actually no statistical reason to sleep for more than 6.5 hours. However, I heard that and I went, oh, I don't really know if that's true. And then I read the next line. And that's because this comes with a caveat of if you're stressed, you need more. If you're an athlete or you work out, you need more. I don't know one person that is not either of those things. I feel like within the course of a day, everyone will experience stress at some point. So I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with 6.5 hours, but I do think that people overestimate how much sleep they do need. Personally, I get 6.5 hours of sleep per night. I train an hour or more a day, and that's enough for me. If you're having issues with that, there might be something more sinister going on. There might be a sleep apnea. There might be something that's keeping you up during the night. But one good night of high quality sleep, like that perfect night when you wake up and you're like, oh, the birds are chirping, had an amazing sleep, it's perfect, can actually improve the speed and skill of your motor skills without a loss of accuracy in executing something new by 20%. So you can learn something faster and more efficiently by 20% after a good night's sleep. A quality sleep also increases your ability to gain new insights into cognitive tasks by 50%. And good sleep promotes good skin health, a youthful appearance, controls insulin secretion, which is your fat signaling hormone, so whether you will store fat or whether you will burn it, and encouraging healthy cells in your body and will increase athletic performance. So, has anyone here ever tracked their sleep? Yeah, so there's an app that you can download called Sleep Cycle. All you need to do is download the app and you place your phone under the bottom sheet of your bed and you sleep. And you wake up in the morning and you can check how many times you've woken up during the night. So I've had a friend who they're like, oh, I had an amazing sleep, and we checked it. They woke up 16 times over the course of their night without knowing. Yeah.
It even like records what you're saying during your sleep.
Yeah.
If you're snoring or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours you slept.
Yeah.
What's the name of it again?
Sleep Cycle.
And I've got another app that's also really good. It's called Sleep Better.
So there you go, sleep better.
Do you ever think?
Question. I tried these apps and I know that if you have Wi-Fi, if you have any gadgets when you sleep, you have a very bad sleep.
Yes.
So if you're having a gadget just next to you, you actually
Well,
sound
the app-
very productive.
Well, you would be trying not to use it every night. So you would use it like once and test. Like I have this. I have a watch, and this actually like tracks my sleep, and it's not releasing as much EMF and radiation as a phone would, which is actually a nice transition. But did you have a question?
I was just going to say, like in the example
Yes.
of your friend, do you ever think like having those sorts of apps is more detrimental if you feel like you got a good night's sleep and you feel good, and then you're like, oh my goodness, I woke up 16 times, I'm exhausted.
Well, yes, but then again, I would say that person would also always complain of exhaustion, no matter how good their sleep was. I'm so tired at 3 o'clock. I think I need to have a nap. Like, I'm just not a nap person. Like, I just can't nap. I'm like too stressed. Like, I'm too up here to nap. But other people are like, oh no, like, I think I need a nap. I'm like, you've just spent like 16 hours of your day sleeping. There might be something going on there, but I understand where you're coming from, because if you then see that and you're like, oh wow, I woke up X amount of times, but maybe that's good. Maybe it keeps you accountable that, okay, maybe I do need to take it easy today. Maybe I don't need to push myself as hard in my workout or at my day and stress my body even more. But in terms of what you were saying with the radiation, that is very important. So for me, airplane mode, easiest way to do it. Just slip your phone over to airplane mode during the night, and the electromagnetic field generated by your cell phone will not interfere with your sleep quality as much as it would have. I'm not sure what the exact statistics are, but it drastically affects your sleep quality having that electromagnetic field on. At home, my dad used to get really annoyed with me because every night I was like, I had OCD or something, I'd run off and like I'd turn off the Wi-Fi, and he's like, what if I want to like lie in bed and look at something? I'm like, number one, you shouldn't be on your phone in bed, and number two, the electromagnetic field is going to mess with my sleep, so we're turning off the Wi-Fi. Also, I own some of these beautiful, really sexy glasses. I've brought the least sexy ones today, but these are glasses that block the radiation of light from my laptop, or from fluorescent light bulbs during the day. So I typically would have never have worn these outside of the house. I've only recently like gotten over the fact of wearing them at dojo. Like I started doing it in the build up to my talk to get some chat around the water cooler. And so these are my yellow ones that block the UV light and the fluorescent light bulbs. However, I've got some ones. Has anyone seen X-Men? You know, the guy that's got like the laser beam eyes? Yeah, I've got some red ones, and I look like him. And you wear them at night and they block all light. So I wear them half an hour before sleep, and my sleep quality improves dramatically. I'm able to drop to sleep within a matter of minutes. However, I will warn that you can't do anything like when you're wearing them. Like I can't, like I've tried to, like I got home late one night and I like really wanted to eat, but I knew that once I eat, like I would be sleeping straight away. And I looked at my plate and I just had no idea where the proportions of things were, like any like spatial awareness. So just keep in mind, like if you're going to try to read, you will need like a light that's attached to your book so that you can actually like see the words, because it is very difficult to actually see. Also, avoid graphic violence on TV in the hours before bed. I made this mistake traveling back from America on the plane, really bored, and I was like, oh, I'm really exhausted, I'll try to get to sleep. Actually, no, I'll watch a movie. And I clicked onto The Conjuring 2, and as soon as I did it, like my conscious mind clicked in and was like, Zhané, what are you doing? You're trying to sleep. This is gonna spike your cortisol, your stress hormone, blah, blah. So I'm like frantically trying to click exit. And I like the first 10 seconds I saw a dead body. And I was like, here we go. I've got another like hour left of trying to bring down my cortisol to lull myself back into that sleep mode. So if you can, avoid graphic violence or hyper-stimulating, even in terms of your books. If you're reading a hyper-stimulating book, there's people that are like, oh, I'm reading this amazing book, I can't put it down. That's great if you're reading during the day. If you're reading up until 12 o'clock at night, perhaps not. And also don't exercise within 2 hours before going to bed. I don't know very many people that do this in Bali, but I know that I've got some friends back home that will go work out after work at like 8 o'clock at night, get home at 10. I don't know how they're ever able to sleep. Your cortisol and your stress hormones are so high, your adrenals are in that fight or flight state that trying to lull yourself back down into a sleep mode is near impossible. So no exercise within 2 hours of sleep. Here's a little interesting fact about sleep. Did you know there is a sleep window in between 10:45 and 11 p.m. each night? So that's depending on where you are, it might change a little bit on time zone or where you are in the world, but that's like the rough guide. So 10:45 to 11 p.m. each night is a window where most people can easily like lull into sleep. Your body sort of like, it dips at that point and you're able to like lull in more easily. The next window, which only opens, you'll get like, so after that window, after the 10:45 to 11 p.m, you will get a cortisol spike. So you will get some stress hormone kick in and you'll get a second wind. So I know lots of digital nomads that will be at dojo from those hours because they feel like they do their best work at that time. And that is probably no lie. Their cortisol is spiked at that time and they feel like they can be hyper productive because they're in that state. So the next window is at 2 a.m. So if you've missed that first window and you're in that cortisol spike, your next time to lull back into sleep is 2 a.m. So if ever you're out at night, I actually choose my nights. If I'm having a really good time, I will look at my watch. I'm like, am I going to clock the first window or the second window? And I'll capitalize on that because I know when I get home, I'll be able to drop in. Also, it might be interesting to note that if you have gone on a low carb diet, you might be having issues sleeping. And that might be simply because a lack of carbohydrate in your evening meal can actually make it more difficult to sleep. So whether you want to include some starchy carbohydrates in your evening meal to help with that sleep quality or that dropping into your deeper sleep, or you could have 1 tablespoon of pure honey before you go to bed. So honey is the most accessible form available to the brain of carbohydrate, and research has shown that such a small amount as 1 tablespoon will raise your blood glucose while you sleep and enable you to drop into that deeper like REM sleep a lot faster. So yeah, that's me wearing the really great ones that I asked them to put that on the event in dojo and they just flat out refused. They're like, no, it's not. And I was like, oh, okay.
15 degrees Celsius, really?
Yeah, so every night I will put my aircon in as cold as it goes. For me, the coldest it will go is 18. I can work with it. But optimal sleep occurs at 15 degrees Celsius. That's why you hear so many people say, I'll turn on the aircon just so I can sleep with a blanket. It's actually not the blanket, it's the cold. And it's the fact that you feel like you're sheltering from the cold.
You really need a blanket.
Exactly, exactly. So there we go. On to the next. Music. Hear music, change your brain. My personal secret to biohacking focus is to put on my headphones, open Spotify, and play my favorite playlist. Then whatever's on is on, and the world around me disappears and I can drop into what I'm doing. To dig deeper into audio as a biohack, however, you might want to understand a little bit more about how the brain works at a higher level. So here we go. Your brain has 100 billion neurons that use electricity and talk to each other. At any moment, millions of neurons are talking at once, which produces a lot of noise and a lot of electricity. When this electricity is measured with an EEG, the result is what we call a brainwave. So we've got these different forms of brainwaves. So here we've got the beta, the alpha, the theta, and delta. And as you can see, awake, a meditative state, a light dreaming, and a deep dreamless sleep, or as I like to call it, you're dead to the world. So, if we know this, they conducted tests in something called the frequency following response. And this is a consistent sound wave. And through opting which consistent sound wave you want to tap into and playing that into your brain, into your ears, you are able to drop into that state. So, at the Biohacking Summit, a man named Bill Harris discussed dramatically increasing awareness. And in his talk, he showed that audio entertainment helps people trying to meditate drop into a meditative state 8 times faster than they otherwise would be able to. Who's heard of binaural beats? Yeah. So binaural beats are these sound waves that have been manipulated. Sometimes they're underlaid with music, but they play a certain frequency that can tap into each one of these states. I personally prefer them interlaced with a music. I find just the hum or the buzz actually quite annoying and quite frustrating. But for some people, it really works. And for some people traveling on planes, it enables them to drop into these states, whether they need to adapt to time zones, etc. So, my hack for music: put in your headphones and tap into audio entertainment. For you, for me personally, as I said, it's a Spotify playlist. For some, that can be too distracting. They need a binaural beats hum. For some, it's a binaural beats underlaced with music, which is like an intersection of the two. There are some. You can just go to www.brainwave.com. You can type in binaural beats into the App Store and they will come up with about 10 apps that you can choose from. Of those apps, there will be some that interlace them with music and ones that interlace them without. There is one, I will check on my phone at the end of the talk if anyone's interested, that I've found that you can actually manipulate the sound waves yourself. So it's not just you select which one, you can change the frequency, the beat, and the volume to kind of optimize the targeted area that you want to tap into of your brain. Now, there we go. Before my talk, we were also speaking about flow. So, a really big theme at this year's Biohacking Conference was the elusive flow state. So the flow state is described as an optimal state of consciousness, where we both feel our best and perform at our best. Time slows down, you forget about yourself, and you perform at a higher level than ever before. In other words, it's when you're kicking ass and you just don't feel like anything can stop you. So, Steven Kotler, he is the author of Rise of Superman. He realized that action and adventure athletes were able to tap into flow more than any other people in the world, simply because their sports put them in life or death situations frequently. It was either flow or die. So, during his research, he also identified 17 triggers to flow. Now, we won't go into each of them because they all kind of need their own time to really tap into, and some work for some people and others don't. Always say yes. For example, that one doesn't work for me. Clear goals, that works for me. Immediate feedback works for me. The challenge. High consequences is a really interesting one. There is an app. I don't know what it's called, but I will find it out for you. There is an app where you can pledge a certain amount of money to what you call an anti-charity. You set a goal, and if you have not reached your goal by the set date, the money you have pledged will go to the anti-charities such as the Ku Klux Klan, and that will then be shared on your Facebook wall that you have just donated this money to the Ku Klux Klan. There is also another app that networks you with people if you're on a weight loss journey, where you have to upload a picture of yourself before, in your underwear, your bikini, whatever, and that becomes like your mugshot. And if you say that you want to lose 10 kilos by this date, if you get to that date and you haven't lost the 10 kilos, your accountability partner uploads that picture to Facebook and tags you and gets to share that you haven't hit your goal. So as much as that sounds horrible, who would be able to guess the success rate of that? 92% success rate of high consequence when you know, I mean, if it comes down like human behavior, we all fear, our ultimate fear is shame or not belonging or being outcast. When you've got a consequence of yourself being shown to be supporting the Ku Klux Klan, I can imagine that that would really get you to the gym, or that would really get you to go to the market today. So for me, I find that one entertaining, but also powerful. For other people, creativity is a really big one, and that taps back into music. Yeah. So something they also learned with the flow is cyclical, and that to experience flow, you must first experience a struggle. So this is the learning phase. You're struggling, you're learning. Then your brain shows the beta waves because you're awake, you're concentrated, and you're trying to overcome this thing. Then next, you must release completely. And this is when your subconscious brain can do its magic and you tap into the meditative state. Then there's flow. So that's your theta brainwaves, where you can access your unconscious mind. And then finally, you enter your recovery phase, which is the deep dreamless sleep, the restorative state. So the takeaway here is, if you're struggling to complete something, push yourself a little longer, then stop and do something completely different. Like take the foam roller and just roll around on the floor. Something different. That release is a critical step for you to enter flow. Work hard on something, then break and disconnect completely. And when you return later, you're more likely to experience flow. Now, there we go. So in Canggu, this next one, perhaps in Ubud it might be a bit better received. In Canggu, everyone thought it was a little bit too hippy-dippy. Gratitude. I cannot encourage people enough, and yes, I'm that weird friend. I'm the weird friend or family member that sits down at the table. So what are you grateful for today? I remember the first time I asked that question at the dinner table, and it was like maybe a few months after like I started yoga, and my dad just looks at me, he's like, "You've gone full-blown hippie." I was like, have I? Have I? So, try this. This chick has wasted the last 20 minutes of my life, I've learnt nothing, and this posture demo she's asked me to do is bullshit. Now let's try this one. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to expand my worldview. I'm practicing my ability to read information and filter what is meaningful for me. Now, even more, I am massively grateful that Dave Asprey injected caffeine into his veins and compiled all this data that this beautiful woman has taken the time to translate for us into one concise presentation. I'm grateful to be learning something new today, and this is my favorite part, and I am giddy, I love that word, to apply one of these techniques in my daily life. Everything is awesome. May seem a bit much, I understand that. However, the point is, well, number one, if you weren't already thinking that, I just thought I would remind you, but what we think about an experience then colors our memory and our recall of that experience. How we view the world, the lens through which we see the world, becomes our reality. So UJ Ramdas also presented this year, and he suggested a few biohacks in terms of gratitude. A gratitude journal, a 5-minute journal, as we were discussing. So that's 3 questions in the morning, 2 questions that you answer at night to reflect on the day. Or my personal favorite that gets the weirdest looks and some really interesting comments. Just ask, what is one thing that you're grateful for today? I've done it at the weirdest times. Like in an argument, and I'm just like, I know I'm wrong, but I don't want to admit it. This is getting really awkward. This is reaching like a peak. And I'm just like, let's just calm down. Just one thing that you're grateful for today. They just look at me like, what are you on about? And I'm like, no, just think about it. And then they almost get too distracted by, why is she asking me this? But the whole energy of that conversation will shift. It won't be an argument anymore. I mean, if it's a really intense argument, perhaps it will be, and then that might become another like targeting point. But yeah.
I just want to share another thing. What I do is I whisper and just change the whole energy. So like,
there you go. Yeah.
They're shouting and they're like, and they just shift. It really works.
Yeah. I mean, just the simple question of what is one thing you're grateful for today, and a simple act of reflecting. If you can't find one thing that you're grateful for, I would say you're probably dead. Are you not grateful to breathe? Are you not grateful that you're alive? Are you not grateful that you're in Bali? Just think about it. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to pick one of these elements. Movement, nutrition, sleep, water, music, flow, becoming the weird friend about gratitude. And try to commit to it for 7 days. And make it failure-proof. Take advantage of the resources available to you. As much as the description of biohacking may have been a little bit haphazard, Google does have a lot of answers and a lot of resources out there. I'm a resource. If you want to stay in chat, if you want to add me on Facebook and ask random questions, I love this stuff. This is like what I spend my spare time doing. It's not a hassle. If you, like, I've had people that ask me like, do you have an Amazon, like after my last talk, I was so excited. Someone came up to me and was like, oh, where can I get those glasses? I was like, we need to be friends. Like it's, so take advantage of the resources available to you, upskill your willpower, and make these habits failure proof. Thank you. Any other